Good evening, everybody. I see it is 6:30, so we are going to start. I'm going to call the meeting to order for the purpose of electing the chair and vice chair. So I'll open up the floor for election of the chair. Councillor Neal.
I wish to move deferral, if I might, for that selection process to our next meeting when we'll have a full complement of our members.
Okay, so we have a motion for deferral. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Turner, seconds. Any other questions or comments from the committee? Okay, seeing none, I get to do this for the first time ever. I will call the question on the motion. All in favor? Opposed? And that carries. So since that has been deferred, I will invite Councillor Neal, who is the current vice chair, since no new officers have been elected, to take the position of chair for this evening. So Councillor Neal, the seat will be yours. And I will also at this time just ask one of the two remaining councillors to volunteer to act as vice chair for the evening. Councillor Turner? All right. Thank you very much, Councillor Turner. And with that, I turn it over to the chair for the evening, Councillor Neal.
Thank you. And I will, in fact, introduce with the proposed speech the public meeting information, and then I will introduce some of the senior planning staff, and we're going to change protocol a little bit, and I'll just ask individual planners to introduce themselves just by name. So if we can do that, that would be great. So this is the notice of collection. Personal information collected as a result of this public hearing and on the forms provided at the back of the room is collected under the authority of the Planning Act and will be used to assist in making a decision on this matter. All names, addresses, and opinions and comments may be collected and may form part of the minutes, which will be available to the public. Questions regarding this collection should be forwarded to the Director of Planning, Building, and Licensing Services. The purpose of the public meetings is to present planning applications in a public forum as required by the Planning Act. Following presentations by the applicant, committee members will be afforded an opportunity to ask questions for clarification or further information. The meeting will then be open to the public for comments and questions. Interested persons are requested to give their name and address for recording in the minutes. There is also a sign-in sheet for interested members of the public at the back of the room. No decisions are made at public meetings concerning applications unless otherwise noted. The public meeting is held to gather public opinion. Exemption to this rule is outlined in Bylaw number 2006-75 to delegate various planning approvals to staff and to adopt certain procedures for the processing of planning applications subject to delegated authority. Council has authorized staff to use discretion in determining if an application can be a combined public meeting comprehensive report to expedite the approval process. We do have a combined public comprehensive report for a community improvement plan amendment to the Brownfields Community Improvement Plan. A decision will be made at the regular portion of the Planning Committee meeting tonight. Information gathered at public meetings is then referred back to Planning, Building, and Licensing Services staff for the preparation of a comprehensive report and recommendation to the Planning Committee. This means that after the meeting tonight, staff will be considering the comments made by the public in their further review of the applications. When this review is completed, a report will be prepared making a recommendation for action to this committee. The recommendation is typically to approve or to deny. This committee then makes a recommendation on the applications to City Council. City Council has the final say on the application from the city's perspective. Following council decision notices will be circulated in accordance with the Planning Act, and anyone with an interest in the matter may file an appeal. Interested persons are advised that if a person or public body does not make oral submissions at the public meeting or make written submissions before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of council to the Ontario Municipal Board, unless, in the opinion of the board, there is reasonable grounds to do so. So, thank you very much. I will introduce the senior staff that are with us tonight, and then I'll ask for an introduction to the planners that are present. Greg Newman is with us tonight, as is Marnie Bandetti, who are both, I believe, managers in the planning department. So if you could introduce the planners that are with us, that would be great.
Certainly through you, Mr. Chair. Tonight we have Planner Sonia Bolton, Planner Jason Sands, Planner Anne-Marie Sabio, Solicitor Mary Ray, and Planner Amy Didrikson with us tonight.
Great. Thank you for that introduction. And we will go to our first public meeting tonight. And the first one tonight, there we go, is file number D35-005-2017 for the property at 1200 Princess Street, 27-33 Elmwood Street, and 670 Sir John A. Macdonald Boulevard, and 217-247 Bath Road. And it's an application for an official plan and zoning bylaw amendment on the Sisters of Providence of St. Vincent de Paul property, and the applicant is Homestead Land Holdings. So, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Mark Tao. I'm a registered professional planner with IBI Group. I'm representing Homestead tonight with respect to these planning applications. So the applications are official plan and zoning bylaw amendments to allow for the development of a 1.6 hectare parcel of land for 3 high-density residential buildings associated with the application, and also applications for severance to create separate lots on the subject lands. So what you see in front of you, there's a red outlined parcel, which is the larger 1200 Princess Street parcel. That's the Sisters of Providence property. The blue outlined property within that larger property is the location of the lands where the residential development is proposed. And the purple outlines are lands also subject to rezoning to accommodate a future cul-de-sac at the western end of Elmwood Street off of Sir John A. So here. So I'll just take you through quickly the facts of each of the different parcels involved. So 33 Elmwood Street is this parcel right here. It currently accommodates an existing apartment building. 217 Bath Road is here, also accommodates an apartment building. In both of these 2 parcels, no changes are proposed, with the exception of a small portion of each will be taken for creation of a cul-de-sac. So these are the 2 main parcels. So this one being, again, 1200 Princess Street, 12.1 hectares, frontage on Princess Street. The southern portion is largely undeveloped, and a portion of which is proposed to be severed off into 3 distinct parcels for the proposed development by Homestead of 3 apartment buildings. I'll just take you through some images of the existing developments. So these are the existing apartment buildings. around the bottom end of 1200 Princess Street to the sister site, fronting either Bath Road or an Elmwood Street. So they're all high-density residential, varying in height from about 5 to 6 stories up to about 12 stories. So these are the existing developments accessed via the internal roadways of Elmwood Street. Elmwood connects to the site from both the east and the west, but it doesn't actually travel through the site. So Elmwood's actually disconnected in the middle where the homestead lands are. This is the western terminus of the site. So this area here is where a future cul-de-sac is proposed to allow for better access to all the existing properties as well as to the new development, which would be off here to the right. These are some of the adjacent uses existing. So Elmwood Park, which is to the northwest of the subject site, the Mother House at 1200 Princess Street, the the separate French school to the east or to the west of the site, and then the low-density residential neighborhood to the west of the site on the western portion of Elmwood Street. And this is the view looking south across the southern end of the Sisters of Providence property. So looking towards the existing homestead properties along Bath Road and towards the site of the proposed 3 apartment towers. This is an aerial rendering showing the existing development in the foreground along Bath Road with the 3 proposed apartment buildings in the midground, and then the Sisters site beyond that. You can see the Mother House here in the background. This is Elmwood Park here. This is the French school. And these are the existing apartment buildings to the east. So this property here and this property here are the sites also subject to rezoning for the sake of the cul-de-sac. The proposed site plan shows the layout of the buildings on the lot to be severed. So there'll be 3 buildings in total. Although they'll be severed into 3 separate parcels, they'll function more or less as one in terms of access. So shared access will be from Elmwood Street to the east, so from the cul-de-sac. There is a access shown here, but at most it would be an emergency fire access only. It would not allow direct access to Elmwood Street west. It would be chained off or somehow barricaded, so only if needed, fire trucks could access the site from the west. So all traffic would go in and out from this area here from the new cul-de-sac. These are renderings showing the elevations of the buildings. So 2 of the buildings are 12 stories plus a mechanical/amenity penthouse, and 1 building, the furthest east, is 11 stories plus a 12th story, which is again a mechanical or amenity penthouse. So the policy context is the provincial policy statement as well as the official plan. So the subject lands are located within the urban boundary of the city. The development proposes to intensify and make use of existing services, including nearby transit. The type of housing proposed is appropriate for the area, given certain design parameters, as well as satisfying the other requirements with respect to infill, intensification, and provision of a variety of housing types. So our opinion is that's consistent with the intent of the provincial policy statement. The official plan, and just to clarify, so there's 3 sites here. Only this site here is subject to the official plan amendment, which is to redesignate the lands from institutional to residential, and also to allow the severances. There's a limitation on how many severances normally allowed within the urban boundary when not done through a plan of subdivision. So these lands in pink will be redesignated to residential. These lands here will remain residential and unchanged as far as the official plan is concerned. So the effect of the official plan amendment will permit the residential uses in the 3 proposed apartment buildings and allow for the access as proposed from the east, so that all access is through the cul-de-sac to the east. The 2 most westerly lots wouldn't have direct road frontage. It would be shared access over the easterly proposed lot. So there's no frontage on a public street for those 2 other lots. With respect to residential uses in the intensification, it looks at the official plan considers matters of impact, both in terms of compatibility of the uses in relation to the adjacent uses around, residential, commercial, et cetera. Looking at things like traffic, shadowing, height, noise, et cetera. And our evaluation is that the proposed buildings on the site as located does meet that test, or do meet those tests in terms of compatibility and appropriateness of the use. Relief from the road frontage, the OP is intended to make sure that sites have appropriate access. So through right-of-way agreements, there will be access guaranteed for the lots to be created in the middle and the west side, so access will be guaranteed through that process, and also through site plan control to make sure that the site functions well as the three apartment buildings share the same access. And in terms of permitting number of lots through consent, the official plan policies limit that to a total of 3, and so this would allow for a 4th lot to be created, and again, with the intention that any considerations for access normally dealt with through subdivisions or servicing would all be dealt with through site plan. So there's nothing in this case to necessarily be gained by creating the lots through plan of subdivision, because no new public roads are proposed or extension of services. In summary, we're of the opinion that the proposal as proposed and with the official plan amendment proposed is consistent with the intent of the official plan and constitutes good planning. With respect to the zoning, the subject site, it's a little bit different than the official plan designation. So the southern portion of the Sisters land at 1200 Princess, you can see right here the dividing line at Phillip Street. The southern portion is already zoned for B1 zone, which is medium to high density residential. The current zoning would allow at least one of the towers to be built under the current zoning allowances. So the site just needs to be rezoned to a site-specific B1 zone to allow for the additional density and to address certain site-specific provisions regarding setback and access. These other 2 sites, again, who are just losing a small portion of land at their corners to accommodate the cul-de-sac, the zoning bylaw amendment applies there only to allow for the loss of land for the cul-de-sac, which has a slight impact on density of the site and may also reduce a few parking spaces on those properties as well. So that's the extent of the rezoning of those 2 parcels. So the proposed zoning specifically for the development parcel is seeking to adjust these requirements. And I can show those in detail in a zoning table, but essentially looking at minor adjustments to yard setbacks, lot coverage, density, parking spaces and location, accessory structure size, and amenity area. So 3 lots as proposed will be zoned as 1. So again, like as through site plan, they would all be combined and function as 1 lot. So in summary, our application for official plan and zoning bylaw amendment, in our opinion, is consistent with the intent of the OP as proposed to be amended, and with the provincial policy statement. In our opinion, is it represents good planning, and when the time comes, we just ask the planning committee to recommend the applications for approval to council. Thank you.
Thank you. And if staff would like to speak to the proposal, thank you.
Certainly. Through you, the application was noticed per the requirements of the Act. That included public mailouts to 105 properties located within a 120-meter buffer of the surrounding parcels that are proposed or subject to the amendments tonight. It also included 7 large on-site signs posted around the perimeter of the subject property, and it also included an advertisement in the local newspaper. To date, staff have received 5 written pieces of correspondence, all of which have been included in your packages tonight for review. And further to that, staff have received multiple phone calls to seek clarification as to the overall project on the subject lands. Thank you.
Thank you. And are there any questions or comments from the committee? Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Concerning parking, I believe there's only 339 parking spots for the whole 3 buildings, and there's 412 units. Could you speak to that, please?
So in terms of the parking requirements, there's 412 units proposed, and what's required under the bylaw is 577. That's 1.4 per unit. We're proposing 390 spaces, which is a slight reduction from 1, so 0.9. Just over, excuse me, just over 0.9 spaces per unit. And so based on Homestead's experience in this area with these, in this location, particularly it's well serviced by transit and the anticipated clientele, they anticipate that at least 0.9 parking spaces per unit will be sufficient. They may end up having more parking spaces on site at the end of the day, but at the very least, the 390 for the 412 units is what's proposed, and they feel based on experience, particularly for units in this area, that ratio would be sufficient. So, noting that part of the component of the buildings will be seniors housing, particularly some affordable housing as well, I think related to seniors accommodations. So, those components of the project support a slightly reduced parking ratio.
Okay, thank you. Would there be space available to add on more parking if that was the case, if you had to, like land space?
The site as designed does have some additional space, but we're also seeking modifications to the lot coverage requirements. So we don't want to necessarily overpark the site at this time. So.
Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none, we will open this up to the public. Just to give everybody a heads up, we have a microphone here. We have a microphone where somebody's already sitting here. And you're welcome to bring up any concerns. All of the concerns will be addressed either by the proponent's agent or by staff at the end of all of the questions being brought forward. Okay? And you will have 5 minutes, and I've even queued up my smartphone to make sure we stick to that, because I easily lose track of time. So we will do that, and help yourself to either of these mics to ask any questions that you might have. So, go ahead. Remember to identify your name and your address. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to go early because I've got to go to another meeting, so thanks for getting me in. Frank Dixon, 495 Alfred, Apartment 2, K7K, 4J4. So thanks, Mr. Toll, for his presentation and the report. I'm supportive in principle of the project, and I do want to list some concerns I have with it. The access off Sir John A through Elmwood, I see as problematic for the scale of the project. As we heard, 412 units, 390 some odd parking spots, and I'm just wondering how many bedrooms might be included there. So I'm fairly familiar with the area, and that street is relatively narrow, and then you're going on to an arterial road. So I'm seeing just sort of the regular access for people who would live there and their visitors, as well as emergency access as being an important issue to get a good handle on. Just wondering how far it is from Sir John A to get in there. It looks like maybe sort of a block and a half or 2 blocks. Perhaps that could be identified exactly. As the planner said, transit is well serviced in the area. It's a major transit hub at Kingston Center, so that's good. Spoke about affordable housing. And I guess my final point is I'm wondering if maybe some of the parking could be put underground. I know it does cost more, but it is more efficient use of land. Thank you.
Thank you. And the next gentleman?
How's that? Hear me now? Oh, yeah, okay. My name's Gary Dells, and I am the treasurer on the board of directors for the Condominium Corporation, number 21 Champlain Towers, 257 Bath Road. The gentleman tonight, he talked about all the apartment buildings that are in there, but we are condo owners. We have one building in the back corner, and we are greatly affected by this. We are not opposed to the new development here in Kingston, but are concerned in how these 3 new apartment buildings will affect our residents and our building. Our board president, Robert Coe, has sent you a memo, which is part of your package there, and it lists quite a few items that we're concerned about: water flow, parking, etc. I'm not addressing all those items tonight. I'm just going to address the flow of traffic on that road that this gentleman just talked about also. We have a high-density population using Elmwood East, a mere 0.2 kilometers of road to Sir John A. Macdonald Boulevard. This includes high volume of deliveries, taxis, healthcare buses, school buses, contractors, etc. Many times, one lane is blocked due to construction or lawn maintenance people doing the lawns for all the apartments in that area. We have an entrance to exit to Sir John A. with a short time traffic light that stops for 3 minutes and only allows 30 seconds of exit time from this area for both pedestrians and cars onto Sir John A. A possible solution, I'm going to give you a couple ideas that just take note. Increase exit time on lights to allow cars to go first on a green light to pedestrians, so increasing the time. Also, maybe painting the lines so the cars can line up properly so they're not all jammed up. If we can get out on the right lane, it would help the flow of the traffic. So we have a problem today. We're getting by, where nobody's complained, I don't think about it, but we could see with this apartment building coming in, it's going to cause a major problem. Traffic backups when school buses are picking up and dropping off students. A full bus load takes time to load and unload. Meanwhile, all the traffic accumulates at both ends, the front end, the back end, while this school bus is picking them up. They're not just picking up 2 kids, they're picking up everybody in all those apartment buildings, so it's almost a full bus. Possible solution is change the school pickup and drop-off location. I don't know how you're going to do that, but something's got to happen because that little traffic that gets jammed there now, we can't go on with it. If these 3 new buildings with 412 apartment units are to be built, we must have a secondary entrance and exit for all residents of this area. This will help alleviate the traffic all entering and exiting the short 2-kilometer stretch of Elmwood East. This would help assure we have more than one exit or entrance point in case of an emergency, fire, or major evacuation. Also, if these units are going to be constructed, what about the high flow of the construction traffic down to this dead-end, busy 2-kilometer road? We are very concerned for the safety of our residents and children. Possible solutions: join Elmwood East and West to form one road so you have 2 exits to get out of this area. Create an entrance exit road onto Bath Road, or possibly extend Phillip or Fairview Avenues. We have to have a second in and out of this area. The parking, I know we already covered it in our memo that we sent you, but listening to it tonight, going down to 0.9 is sort of shocking, because we already have problem of chasing people out of our area that are there for parking. They're taking our visitor parking. So if you put that in there, it's going to be hell to pay, I'll tell you. Anyhow, I thank you for your time, and I'm anxious to hear what's going to happen.
Thank you. Any further questions from the public? Going once? Oh, there you go. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and gentlemen and ladies. My name is Jean Gower, and this chair is giving me trouble. There we are. Thank you. Start again. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jean Gower. I live at 16 Kingsgate Place, which is across Princess from the subject property, a little farther north and west. However, I do walk this property regularly. You can't always get through where you would like to walk, but that's because in times gone by, residents have tried to keep away from through traffic on narrow roads. However, I do walk. Could we have that map, please? Could we have the map again? Thank you. The one we were sent wasn't terribly helpful, actually. But I do walk along Sir John A., along Hillendale, up into Fairview, is it? Which is a dead end into the Heathfield property. Then out again and down to Bath Road on Portsmouth, and then up again on Sir John A., which makes a sort of a square, but not a very square. That's 2 minutes. I better speed up. However, that means I know the area from the ground level looking up. I have several concerns about this proposal. The first one is it's yet another assault on the official plan. Why, except for profit? Excessive, I would guess, but I can't prove that. Does it have to go higher than the official plan allows? Yet again, in the history of recent councils, time after time, the OP amendment goes through because somebody wants it higher than the official plan allows. My second concern is already been mentioned, and that is traffic congestion. I'm not sure the pedestrian safety has been stressed enough. Boy, try walking across Sir John A. where Elmwood comes out. I dare you, especially if it's slippery. Try it. I think everyone who proposes this project or describes it or talks about it should go walk it so you know what you're talking about. Another thing is the wind tunnel effect. It's generally known among architects that if you get too many tall buildings, you can get amazing wind drafts to the point where doors that have been built have to be moved to the other side of the building. I trust the architects know what they're doing, but you never know for sure, especially on the buildings that are already there. And I guess my final concern is a general one. Oh, it's already been dealt with, really. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Thank you. Any further comments or questions? And you can ask questions of staff or the proponents. Any further questions? Seeing none, going. Oh, I'm sorry. We're only allowed. Oh, that's for anybody who hasn't already spoken. I apologize. I should have made that clearer. I will say that whenever the comprehensive report comes up, for the first time, and I look to staff to confirm this, we will have give people another opportunity to speak. Yes.
Thank you. Through you, there will be the opportunity starting at the next meeting for people to speak to the comprehensive report. However, I would urge members of the public that are here that if you have questions regarding the application, the contact information for the planner, Jason Sands, on the file is included on the notices that were sent out so that we could be aware of your concerns at this time while we're working through the application.
Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing.
Oh, this is just for the public.
This is just the public section. Any further questions or comments? Yes.
I have to go to the microphone, sir.
If you can just, if you could go to the mic, that would be great. Yeah, we do record the commentary, so thank you.
My name is Doug Bolter. I live at Champlain Towers, 257 Bath Road as well. The question is, several of us submitted letters, and we were notified that we would be told of future meetings. We did not receive personal notification of that. We did see the signs that were posted, but I wondered in any future meetings that are held, will we be receiving any personal notification of those? Thank you.
And I'll ask staff to respond to that if they would.
Certainly, through you. Most definitely, you will receive public notification of any subsequent meeting relating to this application. It's typically sent out via email for those who have requested public notification. If you have not signed in at the sign-in sheet with respect to tonight's application, I do urge you to do that as well. Thanks.
And I'd like to add that people are welcome to submit written forms of questions or comments through our planning department, and that also puts you on a list that gives you standing should there be a future OMB hearing, or gets you onto that mailing list, as I understand it. So feel free to communicate with the city through the planning department. So I will, again, gone. Thank you very much. This public portion of the meeting is closed with the exception of committee members being allowed to respond. Oh, I'm sorry. That was a rookie mistake. It's all yours.
It's okay. So thank you to everybody who came out and had questions. So through you, Mr. Chair, I'll answer a few as best as I can, more in themes than individuals. So obviously concerns about traffic, and we received letters that you submitted, and we reviewed them. So on the point of traffic, there was a traffic study that was done as required by the city, looking at the capacity of the existing intersection and the street network and existing conditions and what's proposed to be added. And so the traffic study was done. It's available to review. Staff review it internally, and they provide comments on it to see if there's any concerns with it. The report did identify that the existing intersection, signalized intersection, could accommodate the additional traffic. But again, that's something that is subject to review by the city with their comments as well. With respect to distance to Sir John A, it's about 180 meters from the site to the intersection. So in terms of walking distance to available amenities and to public transit, it is close enough by, though part of the traffic study also looked at the length of that road and ability to accommodate traffic in the peak times without causing backups, for example. So they did look at that issue as well. There is parking that's underground. Mr. Dixon's gone already, so part of the parking is to be underground as well. So that is already part of the proposal. In terms of the OP and questions about height, so no amendments are required for height. The height is within the allowances of the official plan as well as the zoning bylaw, so no requirements for relief are needed there. And wind impacts, so again, that's something that if it does come up, staff usually will flag a requirement for a pedestrian wind comfort assessment. So given the location and the existing uses, one wasn't necessary in this case, so looking at the conditions of that site. I think that's about it, unless anybody had anything else.
Thank you. I believe staff wanted to comment? No? Questions from the committee? Yes.
I believe one of the questions that was asked was also, is there a reason why we can't have thoroughfare all the way across and meet both parts of Elmwood?
I know there were some conversations about that, and I can't, it's like, it wasn't part of my, I guess, investigation, so I think there was some consideration of that. The problem is that part of the, if I have a good image that will show that condition, this might be the best. So this would be the potential connection through here. The problem is, I think there's concerns with through traffic being generated because of that connection east-west. Also just concerns about sufficiency of the setbacks from buildings. There's also a major servicing corridor that goes through here as well. So it was looked at, but I don't have many answers on that, so it may be a question that staff, you may want to ask of staff afterwards if they have more details on that.
Yes, looking to staff. Ms. Vendetti.
Through you, there were some discussions with respect to that, and we certainly don't have all of the answers this evening, but it's something that we can have some further discussions with our engineering group about. As Mr. Town mentioned, there were some concerns with respect to cut-through traffic and directing the volume of traffic as well through the residential neighborhood that's to the west of this site. In addition, as was identified, there were some concerns with respect to the width of the right-of-way, as in some of the land in there is currently being used for parking for other developments. So it's something that we can have a better look at and bring some more comments back in the comprehensive report, definitely.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Turner.
Thank you. And I'd like to ask staff about the school buses, if you could look into that as well and how that's managed. If you could put that into the report, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Great. Duly noted. Would you take the chair? I have a couple of questions. Thank you.
I take the chair and recognize you.
Thank you. I know from my experience in my district, which is Williamsville, because it's immediately on a transit corridor, quite often we do some forgiveness of parking, also in recognition, although the unspoken reality is in recognition that there are a number in the Williamsville corridor, there's a number of students that live in those accommodations and the requirement for parking may be less. I'm curious about, does this qualify, and I'm probably looking to Mr. Newman for this, does this qualify for the corridor and nodes transit qualification? Because this is somewhat off that corridor, kind of. It's a little distant from the corridor application, or is it?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I believe the question is it in a center or a corridor as identified in the official plan? And if it's not immediately within, it's very close to being within the Kingston Center. So that's something we can certainly confirm through the comprehensive report.
I'd appreciate that consideration. I too share with Councillor Turner the concern about potential traffic impacts, and given the density of this proposal, I'm looking to staff, will there be a request for any kind of peer review for the traffic study? Will that be a potential question that comes up? Because I know in other high density developments, we're requesting those third-party arm's length peer reviews. Looking to staff for that.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Many of those peer reviews that you're referencing have been done because of the significant reduction in parking that's been requested, but they have also looked at cumulative traffic on a corridor. So I don't know the answer to your question with respect to the comments. The traffic study is being reviewed by our engineering department and the city's traffic engineer. If there are questions or concerns with respect to that, a peer review is an option, but we don't have those comments in hand at this point.
Thank you. I'm always somewhat reassured when we have peer reviews, so just to put that out there. My other question is in regard to, will this be a site that will have a potential for on-site parkland, or will this be a development that seeks payment in lieu of parkland? I don't know if that's a staff question or a question to the proponent.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I believe at this point that the discussion has been with respect to cash in lieu of parkland for this particular development. That hasn't been finally determined, but looking at the proposed site plan that's on the screen, it appears that that is what's being proposed, and I know that there have been discussions with that.
Thank you. I look forward to that information concerning that, because of course the issue sometimes with payment in lieu of parkland is that the money doesn't necessarily go to available parkland at the development, near the development site. It often goes into a pool and may go to a west end or an east end, and I always support parkland, increasing parkland, but it may go to another area. My final question, and this would be to the proponent, I believe. I know this developer in the past has asked for relief on both accessible parking requests and for bike parking. Do we have some assurance that those aspects will be met on site with this development?
The amenity space, or sorry, the bicycle parking is proposed at a ratio of 0.25, so about 100 bike parking spaces, which, again, we've heard from various developers that when they provided bike park, like structured bike parking, that the uptake is in or less than that, like closer to 10% potentially. So they're proposing 0.25, which is based of structured bike parking, which is, you know, in their experience, sufficient to accommodate needs of the building. With respect to barrier-free, the intention is to meet the new AOTA-based standards. So the application that was submitted was put together just around the time that the standards were changing. So we hadn't updated it to the recent standards, but the intention is that they would meet it. So,
because, and I'll go on the record as saying, those two issues, I mean, we're building not for last year's demand for bike parking, but for future. And so I think those figures should be a little bit more aspirational, and the same with when it comes to accessible parking. And so on those two issues, I will go on the record to say that they're probably deal breakers for me. I'd be looking in the comprehensive report that we meet those current standards that are requested. So,
and I think
thank you.
The only thing I add to that is as the modal shifts happen and people use cars less and maybe use cycling more, existing parking spaces can be changed to bike parking, for example. So as the uptake happens or as that change happens, and demand for parking spaces goes down for vehicles, additional parking can be provided for bike parking, for example, or car sharing, that kind of thing. At this point, it's just the alternative of providing the full complement of bike parking is an efficient use of space, either inside or outside. And so I think that's just the reality at the moment from residents, I guess, of these buildings.
Frankly, I'd rather you say we can fix that now and not that we might be able to fix it in the future. So, thank you. The other quick comment I just have to make is that site plan, where a lot of these decisions around parking and garbage and similar things is a delegated authority to our staff to negotiate. However, and I'll look in the whites of his eyes, if you ask your district councillor to request a bump up through council, that's always a possibility, and then site plan becomes an opportunity for this committee to review that in future. So, any other questions or comments from the committee or from staff? Yes.
Through you. I just want to make a comment to say that to date there has not been a site plan application received for this development. But when the site plan application is received, there will be public notification provided on site through signage. and it will also be publicly available, all the documents and supporting information through our online portal, Dash. Thanks.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Great. So,
I give you back the chair.
thank you very
There you
much.
go.
Seeing no further questions from the committee or comments, I declare this public meeting closed. If you haven't yet signed in the back, please do so. Thank you. So we will move on to our next public meeting, which members of the committee may be, and staff may have a little deja vu moment. This is a proposal that's come through planning on a couple of occasions. There were boundary issues that we were requested to correct. I look forward to the report on the Community Improvement Plan amendment. This is for our Brownfields CIP amendments that have been proposed. So, moving right along.
Thank you.
It
Good
is
eve-
deja vu. Thank you.
It is. Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, and ladies and gentlemen. We are here this evening, again, to present the city's revised Brownfields Community Improvement Plan. The purpose of this whole undertaking when we began, of course, is to update and amend the plan. As a bit of background and looking at the schedule, originally back in June, there was a report to council which sort of gave council the heads up that the city was looking at undergoing a comprehensive review of the Community Improvement Plan. And at that time, council also put on hold any decisions for funding applications or new or expanded project areas. The first public meeting was held in July, and it outlined all of the proposed changes that the city was looking at making. There was a second public meeting in October, primarily to look at some boundary changes to project area 1A, but also to look at some of the changes that the city had decided not to make. There were some financial considerations that we had given some additional consideration to after consultation with the public. And there was, at that time, about the day before the public meeting, an additional piece of correspondence received from someone who was asking for some additional changes to project area 1A. So the purpose of tonight's meeting is to address specifically that additional boundary change, but we're also going to provide a summary of the overall changes to the program. The notice for tonight's meeting was given in accordance with the Planning Act, with a notice in the WIG standard more than 20 days in advance of the meeting, and also anybody who had previously provided comments or requested notice was provided notice of tonight's meeting. And since the second public meeting in October, we have not received any correspondence or questions from other members of the public. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Hugenboss, who is going to speak specifically to the project area changes, as well as a summary of the overall changes to the CIP.
Thank you, Sonia. Yes, again, I'm Peter Hugenboss, Director of Real Estate and Environmental Initiatives for the City of Kingston. And like Sonia said, we have, just to clarify, a couple of proposed changes to the project area 1A. As we previously talked about in the last public meeting, there was an expansion of the boundary in the downtown block of King, Queen, Princess, and Wellington. And they were identified in 2013 and were omitted from that update. So that property is now shown as in project area 1A. And there was as Sonia said, a request at the last public meeting to include a portion of a combined property. So the committee directed staff to resolve that issue through a deferral, and we have since received information about that property and took a look. It was consolidated in 2009. It is one property, and we reviewed information, and it is it does qualify as a brownfield site to be included in this this program. So we have provided that here. As you see, the first boundary expansion I was mentioning is the one at the bottom, the full city block downtown, and the second is at 55 Rideau, which is connected to 292 Wellington Street at the top there. With that deferral, staff also reviewed the rest of the boundary areas to determine if there is any more recommendations as a consolidated property. There are none. No recommendations from staff to add any more. There was one issue that was noted. The lines were offset in some of the mapping that we have in some locations. The mapping for boundary 1B, which is Block D down the street in Ontario, have been shifted slightly in some of the mapping we had. So we are making sure that it's back into its original place as approved by council. And these are all the areas across the city, and we've provided this information through the public meeting so far. As Ms. Bolton noted, we had good public input, and the staff recommendation is to revert back to the existing financial program of being able to provide up to 100% of the eligible remediation costs of the program and provide that through an 80% rebate of the incremental tax increase from the development over a 10-year period. So those are the key financial incentives for the brownfield program, and they're remaining in place with this recommendation. The recommendations, again, are excluding provincial and federal properties, either current or recent provincial and federal properties, taking out the exemption for DC and impost fees, removing or placing a hold on the applications for Area 2, which is Williamsville. So the boundary will still stay in the program, but the direction from council and the committee, based on the recommendation, would be to put a hold on any applications for that area at this time. And we continue to use the sliding scale to adjust financial incentives based on demonstrated need. And that could be that a property has a significant incremental increase in taxes, but a relatively modest amount of brownfield rehabilitation. So in that case, at the full 80% per year, it could be paid off within 1 or 2 years. So one of the uses of the sliding scale can stretch that timeline of benefits. So it's more of a 30 to 40% and provide 4 or 5, 6 years to the program. Overall, a clear document, a clear process for applications with this update, and also acknowledging that Area 1A, the Inner Harbor, is the priority focus of the Brownfields program. There are some key properties there that we know would require substantial support through this program, and that is the extent of the changes. I know we've been through that a few times here, and that's fine, but happy to provide the updated boundary information.
Great. Thank you very much. Any questions? Oh, I'm sorry, staff. Any comments further than? So.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. No, nothing in addition to add other than just reiterating that we did get notice of tonight's meeting in accordance with the Planning Act, and certainly happy to address any specific questions or anything that may not have been outlined in the presentation.
Great. Thank you very much. Questions from the committee? Seeing none, would you take the chair very briefly? I have a couple of quick questions.
I take the chair and I recognize you.
Thank you. Any applications that are right now by right in Williamsville, any that come in prior to council passing this amendment would be honored. So projects that are now in will still be honored. Is that correct?
That is correct. Council has approved a number of properties in the Williamsville area, and those are subject to the terms of the Brownfields program prior to this recommendation. And I would also like to, those are either they're actually already developed and they have benefits, or they've already been approved and awaiting development. I would like to add that over this summer, there was an application that has come in. It has now been deemed complete with environmental reports provided. The application is complete. Staff will be bringing a recommendation to council very early in 2018, and that also will be under the old rules as of right, if you will, from a planning perspective.
Is it only applications deemed complete, or if somebody comes in next week with an application and you request some more information, have they got in under the previous rules for Williamsville?
Council did direct staff to withhold any more recommendations to council until this process is completed. Any applications would need to be fully complete prior to council passing this program, these changes. So I don't anticipate that, because there is a lot of environmental work required to have a complete application, and the one I spoke about has completed all that work.
And my final question has to do with the fact that the Williamsville zone hasn't been totally removed, but it's been put into a kind of abeyance. So if somebody comes forward, and I'm thinking of a property, for instance, that previously hosted a dry cleaner. If somebody wanted to develop that site, that isn't what I've been calling is light brown fields, which is the former gas stations along that corridor, but actually would require greater remediation. The city still has the ability, through a council recommendation, to lift the freeze on that particular proposal. Is that accurate?
That is correct. The boundary is not being removed from the program. It's just a direction from council to not process any applications. If council wishes to change that decision for any or all properties in the boundary, they can give that direction to staff and open up that area. The area will remain in the program.
Thank you very much. Any further questions? Thank you.
We'll follow protocol, and I'll give you back the chair. There you go.
I appreciate that. Sorry for jumping the gun. This is an opportunity for people in the public to speak. If there are any public comments or questions. Yes.
Try the chair this time. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Did I hear you mention that there were certain changes being made as a result of public input?
That we'll wait until all of the public have had an opportunity. You may be the only question, and then that will be
Well,
answered.
then when and how could we find out what these changes are?
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, and the one question that was asked will be addressed by our planning staff. Thank you.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. So in the presentation, these last 3 slides here were essentially a summary of the main concerns that we heard that resulted in changes to the way we had originally intended on revising the document. The report that's before the committee this evening is it is a combined public meeting report with a comprehensive report. We're doing it that way because this is the 3rd public meeting, and because we have not received any other requests or suggested changes or even any comments. The report number is PC 18001, and there is a section within there that outlines numerically all of the questions that we got throughout the previous 2 public meetings, as well as through the written submissions and responses from staff to those questions. So they varied. There were concerns with respect to the financial components of the program, as well as the project area boundaries. Those were the main two sets of themes of comments that we received, but they're all detailed in that report. And certainly, if Ms. Gower is interested in more information, I'm certainly happy to have an offline conversation about more of the details if she wishes.
Thank you very much for your response. Any further questions from staff? We will have an opportunity to vote on this in our regular session. So, seeing no further questions, we will declare this public meeting closed, and we'll move on to our regular planning committee meeting. And so I'll call this meeting to order, seeking an approval of the agenda. Mover and a seconder, I guess. We only have the two of you, so all those in favor? Carried. Confirmation of minutes. Minutes held Thursday, November 16th, be approved. Yep, that was you were at that meeting? Great. Excellent. Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Carried. There are no delegations. There is a briefing, and we're going to... do we have any pecuniary interests to declare? Seeing none, we will move along to our briefing, and we're going to learn everything we need to know about the City of Kingston tree bylaw. Thank you. And just so people know, I don't see a lot of people in the public left, but briefings, the committee has an opportunity to ask questions. There is a recommendation that will come forward a little bit later, and once that is moved and seconded, the public will be recognized if they have comments or questions. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Hello, good evening, Mr. Chair, members of Planning Committee, staff, and members of the public. My name is Anne Marie, and I will be presenting revisions to our tree bylaw. This bylaw initially came into effect in 2007, and since then we've identified changes to be made in order to align with the city's strategic plan with regards to intensifying the urban forest, and also to be in line with our official plan with regards to sustaining a natural and healthy environment. We've identified some changes that would improve also our permitting process and to make it more efficient. So we're presenting here our final draft for your consideration. So we've done a fair bit amount of consultation with regards to the revisions of this bylaw. We did hold an open house at the Invista Center on November 2016. That was followed through a report to the Rural Advisory Committee, which considered the input that was received through that public open house, and that was on February. To follow that, we did present a report to a planning committee on March the 2nd. And at that meeting, we did receive some comments with respect to how the tree bylaw affects the rural area. So from then, we conducted further consultation with our rural community, and we were present at the Kingston Fall Fair this past September, where we engaged with the public. We informed them of the changes with respect to the tree bylaw as it affects the rural area. And we also held a public open house at the Fairmount Home on September 20th, 2017, and as well as we held coffee chats. And we also presented a report at the Rural Advisory Committee on October 23rd. So we did hold a fair bit of consultation with respect to the bylaw, not just taking in consideration our rural community, but also our urban community as well. So in terms of our proposed revisions with regards to how the bylaw applies, we looked at how permits would be required for the removal of trees within significant woodlands, environmental protection areas, and selective harvesting. We also put in separate categories and made it area specific for exemptions with respect to the urban area versus the rural area. And we also implemented new provisions with respect to the rural area as it relates to personal use and commercial harvesting. We also look at exemptions to normal farm practices, and we also included additional information with regards to compensation, financial securities, and legal agreements. So as it stands today, how the bylaw applies, so this is a list of when a permit would be required. So a permit, and this is not the whole list, these are just some criteria. So a permit would be required if there are trees greater than 15 centimeters in diameter at chest height to be removed. If someone wanted to remove trees located on municipal property, so that might be a tree located on your front yard, that might be located within the city owned right of way, trees located within environmental protection area, trees located within a tree preservation plan, and also the removal of distinctive trees. So distinctive trees are trees that are uncommon to the Kingston area in terms of size, age, and maturity. So the pictures that you see before you at the top here is a coffee tree, and below that is also a distinctive tree that is a pine. So with regards to the exemptions of the tree bylaw, so these are cases in which a tree permit would not be required. So if you wanted to prune your tree, if you wanted to remove a dead, diseased, or hazardous tree, at this time, the tree does not apply to residential lots. For new construction, so if someone wanted to obtain a building permit where no planning approvals would be required, and also the installation or maintenance of utilities, driveways, or access routes. So these are all cases in which a tree permit would not be required. So the intent of the revisions is to regulate and control the widespread clear cutting on rural residential lots, set reasonable limitations for tree removal in the rural area, protect sensitive natural areas such as environmental protection areas and significant woodlands, and to encourage good arboricultural practices, which is the proper care and planting of trees, and good forestry practices, which is the proper maintenance and harvesting of trees, taking into consideration of the existing natural environment. So in terms of the urban area, you would be exempt if you were removing trees if they were situated on a lot that was occupied by a residential unit. Also exempt if you wanted to remove trees located within the limits of a lot created by a plan of subdivision, consent, par law control, or registered plan of condominium. However, a permit and an environmental impact assessment would be required if you wanted to remove trees within a significant woodland or an environmental protection area on a residential property. So we talked about clear cutting earlier, and the way that we looked at clear cutting is that we wanted to find a definition for it. So we did conduct a mapping analysis, and we took what the historic minimum lot area is, which is 0.4 hectares, which is equivalent to 1 acre. So this is an example here in the rural area of a 1 acre lot. And we looked at it in terms of how much of the lot is required in order to accommodate for a house, for a septic, and a well. And we found that roughly it's half of that lot, which is 0.2 hectares. So we felt that a definition that would be appropriate would be that if someone was to remove trees within a portion of a woodland or within a significant woodland that's in excess of 0.2 hectares, which is half of this property, that would be permitted as an exemption to the bylaw. So in terms of clear cutting, we also looked at personal use. So as it stands right now, if you wanted to remove trees for personal use on your rural property, and this is an exemption specific to the rural area, there are no limitations as to how many trees that you could cut. So there are no limitations. So the existing provision is if you wanted to injure or cut down a tree, you can do it as long as you remove the trees in accordance with good arboricultural practices and good forestry practices, and that the trees are for the landowner's personal use. So personal use could be to heat up your home, or maybe just to use the trees for fencing on your property. So in considering reasonable limitations, we looked at other municipalities to see if they had limitations in terms of removing trees for personal use on the rural property, and we found that it was a range between 6 to 20 cords of wood. So taking that into consideration, what we've done here is that we've used a sliding scale approach, which is tied to how large your property is, and the greater size your property is, then you're permitted to remove more cords of wood. So for example, if your property is less than 5 hectares, you can't remove more than 10 cords of wood. If it's greater than 5 hectares, less than 10 hectares, no more than 20 cords of wood would be permitted to be removed. And if your property is more than 10 hectares, then no more than 30 cords of wood would be removed. So this is something that we're proposing in terms of reasonable limitations for personal use. So a cord of wood is 3.63 cubic meters in volume, and dead and hazardous trees would be exempt from this. So in terms of commercial harvesting, this is another exemption found in the rural area. A permit would be required for commercial harvesting on lands greater than 1 hectare. So in keeping with our objective to issue appropriate limitations for the removal of trees within the rural area, and also keeping with the objective to avoid clear cutting, the revised provision is that the injury or destruction of a tree for commercial harvesting, where permitted by the applicable zoning bylaw, provided that no more than 10 cords of wood per 1 hectare of woodland are removed within a consecutive period of 12 months. So in looking at our significant woodlands and EPAs, we've had earlier iterations of our bylaw in which we actually put in provisions in which we would be requiring permits for the removal of trees within significant woodlands and EPA within the rural area. And also with that, we would be requiring an environmental impact assessment. And in consultation with our rural community, it was found that their comments were that this maybe would be too onerous in terms of going through the permitting process. So what we've, and this map does show the significant woodland and EPA within the city shown in dark green. So what we've implemented here is selective harvesting methods. So what selective harvesting is that it's the selective removal of trees that allow for the regrowth in accordance with good agricultural and good forestry practices, as long as the tree removal does not result in clear cutting. So the new provision here is that you can remove or destroy trees undertaken through selective harvesting for personal use, for commercial harvesting, or those subject to a forest management plan within EPA areas or significant woodlands. However, if you are removing trees that are not undertaken through selective harvesting, then you would require to complete an environmental impact assessment to the satisfaction of the city, and a permit would also be required. So one of the other exemptions that came up was normal farm practices, and currently, as a bylaw is, in terms of the schedule shown up here, is that a permit would be required in the hatched area if one wanted to remove trees as part of a normal farm practice, as part of their agricultural operation. So this is the area shown in red, covering the urban area as well as the former deferred areas of the city. And you would require a permit for this area. So we did consult with our legal department, and we have confirmed that there is no municipal bylaw that would regulate the removal of trees for an agricultural operation as long as it's associated with a normal farm practice. So what we are proposing is that this schedule be removed and that normal farm practices are exempt, meaning that normal farm practices and the removal of trees could occur anywhere within the city. If there is a dispute with regards to what constitutes a normal farm practice, that would be directed to the Food, Farm and Protection Board if it cannot be resolved by the municipality. So we also looked at the valuing of trees, and what this means is how do we calculate as to what a tree is, what it's worth. So there are 3 methods here, and the first one is the arboriculture trunk formula method, which is commonly used in the review of site plan applications. So if one wanted to, an applicant wanted to construct a dentist office on a lot containing 4 existing mature trees, they would use this, our forestry department would use this arboriculture trunk formula method, and that would take in consideration the age, species, and size of the tree. We also look at subdivision criteria based on tree replacement ratios, and this is for our greenfield development. So that would be, for example, if a tree is healthy, we would be asking for 2 trees, so that's a 2 to 1. If the tree is in moderate condition, it would be a 1 to 1 ratio. We also look at an alternative method that is determined with city forestry staff, where it can be demonstrated that the objectives of the bylaw and the broader objectives of the city will be achieved. So this might be the review of an arborist report, and we would assess the value of a tree at that point. This would maybe commonly used in the review of a request to remove trees on a brownfield property where removals are required to support remediation. We also looked at including further information with regards to compensation, securities, and agreements. So compensation is sought when replacement trees cannot be accommodated on the site. So these are cases where there might not be any space for any planting of new trees on the site. So that's when we would have compensation and no replacement trees. We would take securities as part of a tree permit issuance when replacement trees are required. So the process of this is that we would take the securities, hold that for a minimum of 2 years following planting. We would use it to cover the cost of replacing trees that do not survive, and these securities would be returned to the owner once it's been confirmed that the trees are healthy and in good condition. So in order for us to move forward with these securities, this method, a legal agreement would be required by the city that would have to be entered in with the applicant when receiving financial securities in support of the issuance of a permit tied to the removal of trees that would be replaced on site. If an applicant wanted to remove trees in advance of a prior of a planning approval, what would happen is that they could apply for a tree permit with us and submit the securities and also enter into a legal agreement with the city. However, once the, say if it was a subdivision agreement, once that subdivision agreement has been executed and the posting of securities has been completed for that subdivision agreement, we would be returning the tree permit securities associated with that subdivision if they so choose to get a tree permit prior to planning approval for that subdivision. So we're proposing that these revisions are appropriate and that they strengthen the existing provisions and that they are in line with the tree bylaws objective of maintaining and increasing tree coverage within the city. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you for a very detailed consultation process as well. I appreciate that. Questions or comments from staff? Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Anybody? No staff need to? Yeah. Yep. Go ahead.
Thank you, and through you. I just need a little clarification. I've been asked by some constituents about the tree program, and thank you for your presentation. It was very informative. The one slide, it says exemption of tree bylaw residential lots. So let's say I'm in the West End, I'm a West End counselor. If someone has a tree and it's 16 centimeters and they don't like it anymore and it's not an endangered tree or a specific tree, let's say it's a willow, don't want to pick on willows, but let's say it's a willow tree and they wanted to take it down, would they have to get a permit to do that, or could they take it down and on their own?
With regards to these new provisions, they would not need a permit to take it down. However, a permit would be required under the proposed revisions if the tree was located within a significant woodland or environmental protection area.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Councillor.
May I ask, where is the definition for natural farmers' practices?
Here, so that's in Exhibit A of your report, through you, Mr. Chair. So that is under page 5 of Exhibit A. So that's number 30, and a normal farm practice means a practice as defined in the Farming and Food Production Protection Act that is conducted in a manner consisting with proper and acceptable custom and standards as established and followed by similar agricultural operations under similar circumstances, or a practice which makes use of innovative technology in a manner consistent with proper advanced farm management practices. That's on page 5 of Exhibit A.
Great. Any further questions? Would you take the chair? Thank you.
I take the chair and I recognize you.
Thank you. Quick question regarding significant woodlands. I know within our OP that's defined sometimes by aerial photography that we've done over the years. And I know from a couple of previous applicants, I'm thinking of a quarry in particular, they've done a review, hired an arborist to review to make the argument that it isn't. Indeed, it isn't significant woodland. Does that trigger our, either through the Conservation Authority or do we do some kind of peer review of that claim by a property owner?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So the criteria Emery has put up on the slide there, the criteria that went into the identification of significant woodlands. So there was a technical process to substantiate what we were mapping as significant woodlands in the official plan. I will admit, though, that that was done in 2006, and there is a need at some point to do an update to ensure that the mapping of woodlands is still accurate. But in the event that there was ever a dispute over what constituted a significant woodland, I think we would look at the merits for, say, a devaluation of the woodland. One thing I will draw your attention to, though, in the bylaw itself, is what we've said is because there was a slide up that showed the map of the northwest part of the city, and you can just see in that map, all the dark green is significant woodland. And if I took the northeast part of the city, or the east part of the city, former Pittsburgh Township, you would see an equally substantial amount of the city covered in dark green. So what the bylaw says, or earlier iterations of this bylaw said, was that we would require a permit and an environmental impact assessment in all of those areas, even if the mapping was flawed. What it's saying now is selective harvesting, as defined, is permitted in those areas of significant woodlands, provided it doesn't result in clear cutting. And so, and that change really was a reflection of all the feedback we heard from rural residents. This is a bylaw that's enforced as a result of complaint. We don't have staff out driving the streets to see if people are cutting trees down at night. So in the rural area, we really felt this was an appropriate accommodation to rural ways of living, to allow for the landowner as the steward of their property to be able to selectively remove trees, provided the test is that they don't do so in a way that results in clear cutting. So I know that's a long-winded answer to that question, but I wanted to make sure I spoke to some of the considerations that were made on that subject.
Thank you. I guess my concern, when you showed the one slide that you said this would not, I believe, be an example of clear cutting because it was only one part of that was clear cut, I guess that gave me some concern. Perhaps you could speak to that.
Sure, through you, Emery, if you wouldn't mind just putting that slide that showed the aerial image. Yeah. So what this was is intended to, I guess, help explain is the square that you see there with the hatching is 0.4 hectares or 1 acre. So what we were trying to show here is the area that's currently still wooded, half of an acre. You would have to remove all of that and more to be considered clear cutting. But based on our analysis of the way in which a rural lot is developed for a septic system and a well and a dwelling and the required separation between all of that, you need at least half an acre to be able to support a reasonable amount of development. So what we were saying is we're starting the threshold of clear cutting at half an acre and more to enable on the hundreds, if not thousands, of rural 1 acre lots that exist, allow them to be built out without creating a situation of clear cutting. And again, that assumes that the entirety of the lot is currently wooded, which is not the case based on our analysis.
Thank you. My final question, again to do with clear cutting, is that there are certain invasive species that I know the Conservation Authority has identified, some of them. And that, as I understand it, sometimes puts significant woodlands at some risk of being declassified. Do we have a hard and fast definition of what significant woodlands is or should be and how it should be defined?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I believe the definition in the bylaw itself refers to the definition in the official plan. Is that? And the slide we had up there earlier identifies the criteria that went into delineating significant woodlands in the mapping. So we do have a definition. It doesn't give recognition to invasive species.
Okay, so if something is identified as significant woodland, and I'm trying to remember the name of the invasive species that seems to be, I think somebody remembered it, that seems to be, yes, pretty rampant. That won't necessarily cause us to delist a significant woodland then, would it?
So through you, Mr. Chair, I think in those situations where someone, again, is going to come to the city and they're going to say that this is not a significant woodland because it's been heavily compromised by buckthorn, for example, then, again, I think we would look at that and whether or not a consideration should be made for, say, allowing clear cutting in a significant woodland. So the part that Anne-Marie mentioned as well is we would consider clear cutting in a significant woodland through a tree permit, provided it's substantiated and supported with an EIA, an environmental impact assessment. So we still require a permit with some substantiating documentation, but it would be a permit that on the basis of all the right information we would issue.
And I lied, I thought that was my last question. But delisting significant woodland, is that a delegated authority to staff? That would have to come through planning and then, because it would be a kind of OP amendment. Am I accurate in that?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. The tree bylaw gives reference to the official plan, the mapping of significant woodlands as illustrated in the OP. So any change to that in the official plan would have to either be done at the time of a 5-year review. That's probably the better place to do it. Or if we were to initiate an update to this study, we could then, stemming from that, initiate corresponding amendments to the official plan, going through a public process.
Thank you, that's reassuring.
I give you back the chair.
Thank you very much. Seeing no further questions, thank you very much for your excellent report. We'll move on to business. And our first piece of business is the Brownfields Community Improvement Plan. There is a recommendation before us. Is there a mover and a seconder? Take your pick of the litter. Any questions? Seeing none. All those in favor? Carried. Our next piece of business is the application for 1010 and 1028 Portsmouth Avenue. That's Jim Baldwin and the IBI Group. Again, there's a recommendation before us. Moved and seconded. Any comments, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you. Carried unanimously again. And the revisions to the City of Kingston tree bylaw, the recommendation is before us. All those in favor? Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Motions? Seeing none. Notices of motion? Other business? We have received some correspondence, both in the addeds and elsewhere. Any comments on that? Seeing none. The date and time of our next meeting is Thursday, December 14th, too soon, at 6:30 p.m. So, is there a motion to adjourn? Of course. No, we don't have a seconder. We can't leave. Seconded by the chair. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you very much.